Is Kung Fu Fighter shouting fire? Like, is that...
Oh,
like,
I should have chat open.
is that like shouting fire in a crowded theater? Or is that just like fire as in we're ready to go? Or is that fire as in Kate is on fire?
Super lit, yo. Hashtag lit. Come on, chat. Come on, chat. Pop
Takes
out.
aim with a potato gun. Yikes.
Oh, I know where I should actually be. I should be at featured.chat.
Yes, you should.
That way I
Have
can
you
feature
ever been
chat
hit
and
with a
read
potato
chat.
gun?
No.
I haven't either. I can't imagine that it's like fun.
Nor can I. But I also wouldn't enjoy paintball because it hurts. So I may be the wrong candidate for this conversation.
I'm still wondering whether I would like paintball. Because I've only ever been once, but the time that I went, I think I've told this story in here before. The only time that I went, I was very, very strapped for cash. So I bought like the barest of minimum. Like I think I had 50 rounds of ammunition for the entire time we were there. And everyone else was buying like 1,000 or 2,000 rounds of ammunition. So everyone else was just going like, ba 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 ba. And I was going, eh. I got to make the rest of these last the next 2 hours. Eh. I'm a bit low compared to Kate. I can fix that. Don't you worry. And you just subscribed.
Yep.
I guess that means that I could also subscribe.
Start our own hype train.
Right?
Take everyone else.
Just
us.
Just amongst ourselves?
Yeah. I mean, there are 4 of us and it only takes 3.
Here we go.
Hello, folks. Oh, shit. And Scott, there we go. We did it.
Hype train.
Choo-choo.
So dumb.
It does literally nothing, like whether we subscribe at the same time or separately. But I guess, you know, if enough people. Yes.
I mean, we do basically pay ourselves to get
we
our
basically
emojis.
just are throwing money at Amazon so that we can use our own faces places.
We're helping
Thank
to
you,
build Jeff
Dennis.
Bezos' yacht one step at a time.
Space yacht.
The wettest day in November and the wettest winter in 10 years, 4 hours of trudge. Yeah, that sounds
Blech.
pretty rough. Hopefully I don't actually know where, what the temperature would have been like, but hopefully it didn't freeze. Hey, Cassie Mouse. Frozen paintballs hitting me sounds like that would be like all kinds of awful.
No merci. No, thank you.
Best workout in years. I have no trouble believing that. None at all. So we've got a bunch of people here, which is good. Today we are embarking further on into experiments. It always feels like cheating that I have the goose behind me and not you.
Oh, well, that's okay.
You're the goose master.
Yeah, but, you know, Goose is watching you.
Ah. Goose is always watching me.
Honk.
So you may or may not be familiar with a little book called Legend of the Five Rings. It'll be backwards on your screen. But, you know, such is life.
It's not for me.
Not for you, but for them it will be.
Oh, you're mirrored.
Yeah, I guess I could mirror my screen.
Yeah, you can unmirror yourself.
Yeah, well, no,
And
I'd
the
have to
goose will turn
mirror
around.
myself on OBS.
Okay.
Because
It's all good.
it's taking the video off of Zoom.
You can uncheck mirror my video within the Zoom video settings.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters that much. You may be familiar with this game, but we are not playing Legend of the Five Rings the way that it is outlined in the book. We are playing it using a cyberpunk hack, which we are developing ourselves. And we are not doing it in a systematic fashion because that's boring.
Yeah.
Instead, what we're doing is we're figuring it out as we go along. So today is going to be like an experiment. We're going to run through character creation with you, Kate, while we are also trying to see if there's anything that comes up that we are going to have to modify. Now, last week, on Clinic Hours, we did go through the character creation steps, and it didn't seem like there was going to be too much that we were going to have to specifically figure out to change. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't when we go a little more in depth. So the idea today is that we are going to run through the character creation, which in L5R is the game of 20 questions. We'll be able to see all of these questions go by. We'll fill out your sheet. We'll see what it looks like. And also, if anybody has any questions, comments, or even just standard RPG questions, you can throw them in there. Remember that if you use !Q, it'll queue your question. I can turn the timer on actually for that. Quick, say something.
I'm saying things like saying that you can do !Q. Hey, how are you today? How are you today, chat? How are you folks doing? I hope you're doing well.
All right, perfect.
Day of kind of DJing. It was fun.
So that is set up. We will be able to answer your questions. It'll throw it into our queue. So we'll start right away with written as rotes. Kiwi fruit, nice color or off-putting?
Allergic.
Yeah.
Nice color. Tasty. Does not agree with me.
I don't know. It's not my favorite shade of green.
No, I wouldn't necessarily select it of all the greens in the world.
Elisabot asks, will Senpai notice me?
Who's Senpai?
Yeah, that would be my question.
Yeah.
Who is Senpai in this particular scenario, and will that person notice you?
Which side? Which way do I look to look at you? This way or
not
the other way?
The other way.
Notice me? Ooh.
Zenpai. Well, that's a question. All right, so if we call up the game of 20 questions, one of the things that is an advantage is that we have a worksheet which is actually provided by our good friends at Fantasy Flight. So you can fill this sheet in. You can use these sheets. You can use this sheet to fill in your answers to the game of 20 questions and to take notes for later. So we are going to go through as it is outlined in the book, and we're going to see what we got here. And we got some emotes off that train.
Choo choo.
Choo choo. Hype pat. It's someone petting a fish.
Yep.
Cool. I can handle petting a fish. All right, so let's open it up. It'll be here on the screen. I'm going to make sure that I have the copy of it up for me as well, so that I can follow along. And let's create a character. Are you ready?
As ready as I'm gonna be.
Have you thought at all about your character up until this point?
So I have broad strokes, and I have like a character trait, but I have not had brain space for more than that. So I feel like hopefully we'll discover some things during today's session, and I will build from there. I feel very much like an actor on the first day of rehearsal who hasn't thought enough and feels put on the spot. And they're like, yes, my character has many motivations.
Has this been happening to you recently?
No, they've had 3 weeks before I joined them, so it's classic.
Very well. The first question in part 1, your core identity, is what clan does your character come from?
So there are a few that caught my eye, but so I was looking initially at Crab, Crane, and Phoenix, I think. No, Crane, Dragon, and Phoenix.
Yeah, you weren't looking at Crab because Crab's a little too much like, you can Crab Rave.
I don't know. I don't know the Kraken rave well enough, but I settled on Phoenix. So I'm picking the Phoenix clan. I'm going to zoom in so I can actually read this. The Phoenix is a symbol of contradictions, explosive power, and great restraint, vast intelligence, and deep humility, immolating self-sacrifice and glorious rebirth. These entwined virtues illuminate the path of Rokugan's most mystical great clan, the keepers of the Tao of Shinsei and caretakers of the Empire's soul. What I think is really neat in this book, something that I've found really appreciated, is that there are often these little like sidebars in blue text that are outside of the standard margin. And I found those really useful when I was reading about the world, and especially about the clans, that it's got a little sidebar about like Phoenix clan culture. That they value the balance and the Tao of Shinsei far more than the other clans, seeking harmony between the mortal and spiritual realms, as well as harmony within themselves. So it's like an extra bit of flavor that isn't necessarily like core crunch, but I find it very useful in terms of getting to understand this world. Once I've played this game for a while, and if I were to keep making characters and keep playing campaigns in the system, I would probably ignore those sidebars. So yeah, sorry, that's an aside about sidebars.
I don't think that's out of place in this thing. Sidebars I really like because it's a great way of organizing information so that you know that here's the stuff you really need to know, it's front and center, and then you can check on the other things for examples or for design notes or for just a little extra flavor. But if you need if you're like, you need the information right away, you're in the middle of game, you're like, oh, shit, I gotta get this going, then you don't have to worry about that. So what clan does your character belong to? It's Phoenix. That means that you are going to get a +1 to your Void Ring.
Yeah. And a +1 to Theology.
And a +1 to Theology, and your status
of
30. Now, Theology, remember, in this game isn't your knowledge of the kami as we know them in L5R. Theology is actually your knowledge of AI. And it's your knowledge of AI, your knowledge of the cloud, your knowledge of how that is interacting with the rest of the world. So that's something that you're interested in as well for your character? Just this?
I think so.
Okay. I mean, now remember, you've got a lot of things that are going to change your skills as we move forward. So even if one of your choices doesn't necessarily give you the mechanical thing that you want, that doesn't mean that you aren't going to be able to increase it later. Because also, you'll get to change things with experience, right? You'll be able to buy things later on. So we don't have to worry too much if things aren't precisely what you would want. But that does bring us to the second question, which is, what family does your character belong to?
So again, this is something that I'm really enjoying about this system, is there's the broad scope of what the clan believes in, and there's the slightly more narrow take on it that a family does. So I'm leaning I have selected the Isawa family, described as the elemental masters who sit on the Council of Five are the true rulers of the Phoenix, and these masters are almost always drawn from the Isawa. As one of the oldest Shugenja families in the Empire, the Isawa have had centuries to learn to commune with the spirits and the most effective ways to request their blessings. Some might confuse authority with arrogance, but at heart, they are pious and beautiful, devoted to ensuring harmony and balance.
So this it essentially means that as a family, your family is quite close and communes regularly with the AI. So we'll get to some more questions later on, because there are questions that involve how you stand out from your situation, right? Like, how do you break stereotypes and all that? But is this something that kind of is interesting for your character? The idea of, being a bit closer to the AI, perhaps even supporting them specifically?
Yes, I'm just reading over the others.
Sure. So you have the Asako family,
Mm-hmm.
and they prize knowledge. The Kaito family, which they safeguard shrines, so they in fact would safeguard.
Yeah, but they're also archers and stuff, so it's just figuring that out. I definitely picked this for a reason, and it's just the trouble is I read a bunch of houses and a lot of families, so I'm trying to figure out why I chose this one, but I'm gonna stick with the Isawa family.
Okay, remember that
yeah.
we can always go back, right?
Yeah.
It's not like once you've made this choice, every single other question that you answer is going to be affected by it. And even if it does, fuck it. We'll just go back and change things, right? I'll also point out the standard disclaimer. We're creating this character on this stream right now, but we're not obligated to keep it, right? Like you can make changes up to and even during play. So if your character does belong to the Isawa family, that means you do have to choose between air or fire as a ring increase. Now, are you familiar with the rings themselves?
If you could remind me, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. So, in terms of rings, we have in the world, in a world, there's the way of the 5 rings. So, this is 5. The greatest philosophers determined that the world was composed of 5 elements: air, earth, fire, water, and void. In our context, the AI, in terms of, you know how like there's quantum computing versus binary computing?
Yeah.
Right? The AI have actually sorted things within 5 rings in order to better understand or grasp human philosophical concepts. So they still keep the idea of air, earth, wind, fire, and void strong for them. So, air is weather and the wind, the invisible and innuendo, and the swiftness of a bird of prey. Earth is stone, wood, and metal, as well as a donkey's stubbornness and a tortoise's patience. Fire is the gentle warmth of the sun or the rage of a wildfire, but also the spark of innovation, the passion of devotion, and the ferocity of a wildcat. Water is an octopus's adaptability and flexibility. It takes the shape of its container, be it a puddle, river, or endless sea. And void is the emptiness of the night sky or nirvana, at once present and transcendent. Now, that's kind of some flavor stuff. Do you want some more information on what those actually
what
mean?
their crunch applications are? Because that's great, and I feel like my character is very water, which I don't think I've leaned into as much in terms of my first few choices. But
right, in Legend of the 5 Rings, your 5 rings both define some of your basic stats, like your endurance, your composure, your focus, and your vigilance are all derived from your rings. But also, when you are taking an action, there are skills that you can perform, and then there are approaches. So if in the World of Darkness, I would ask you to choose an attribute and an ability, say strength athletics or intelligence firearms, right? So in this game, the rings determine your approach. So if you were, say, you're doing a theology, right? You're using the theology skill. The number of ranks that you have in theology absolutely matters, and those are the 12-sided dice that you get to roll. Yeah. But you also get to roll a number of 6-sided dice equal to your approach, and those approaches, for instance, for air, it's analyzing. So you're using culture, government, medicine, you're analyzing whatever. For earth, it's recalling. So remembering things that have happened before. For fire, it's theorizing, extrapolating from the data that you have. For water, it's surveying, so discovering more data. And for void, it's sensing, right? It's sort of letting go and hoping that the answer comes to you. So the concept of an approach.
Looking now at the character sheet, which has that breakdown.
Yeah, it has all the approaches listed on there.
Which is really nice.
Yes.
I'm really pleased with the support that's available even within the character sheet that they've made.
Yeah, their character sheet I find actually is pretty good.
And they also have a like a beginner character sheet that has like certain things that are more emphasized or a little bit of more detailed information, which is cool. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the extra void.
Oh, you're going hard on void.
For now,
I'm good with that. I like that.
I don't think my character is an inventor, an overwhelmer, or an inciter, or even maybe an innovator. They might theorize, but like I think they're more likely to attune, sacrifice, sense, maybe enlighten, and subsist.
Void is kind of like
approaches.
I mean, that's very interesting that your online name is Zenrobo, because void is Zen, right? The void ring is basically along the lines of I will wait until the moment that the universe gives me what I need. In combat, funnily enough, the approach is sacrifice. So it's the idea that like I'll open up my defenses in order to get them to do something so that I can strike. Written as Wrote actually has a question here.
Ooh.
So we'll pop it up there. Is void aligned to intuiting or dowsing? Yes. Intuiting is quite a bit of what at least I can see in terms of that. But that's for intuiting, it's not necessarily performing a logical leap. It's performing an instinctive leap. The concept of like you'll see like the memory palace sort of thing where all the facts and figures sort of like run past your head, like that kind of meme, right? That's not void. Void would be along the lines of in The Princess Bride, when Inigo is trying to find his father and he says, "Father, guide my sword." That is void, right? And then he moves the sword around, it points into a tree, he collapses against the tree because he's like, fuck, and then the tree opens up because he finds the secret passage. That would be an example of void. And somehow I managed to make Princess Bride relevant in L5R, so, that's my accomplishment for the day. But yes,
Life goals.
Sorry?
Life goals.
Yep. But yeah, you will definitely get the ability to get more rings later on. You also get to increase some skills because why not?
Yeah.
Right?
+1 meditation, +1 theology.
So we get to get them both in this state. You don't have to choose, you just get them both. So that means +1 theology and +1 meditation. And when we're finished this, by the way, we're going to look at your whole sheet, and then you can be like, whoa, I didn't mean to build a super X character, and then we can go back and start changing some things. You also get some starting wealth, which is 5 koku. Who doesn't love a good koku?
Yeah.
And your glory is going to start at 44, which is high.
Huh.
It's not over. Whoops, I didn't mean to. I screwed with something. Get back here. There we go. It's not like overwhelmingly high compared to others, but most families are at 40. There's a few at 44. Occasionally you'll see a 45. And then some of the other clans, you'll find that the glories are dropped in the high 30s. And then, of course, if you go into the Scorpion clan, they tend to, well, actually, no, they're about the same for glory. It's honor that they
I believe that's Koku Turtle, if I recall correctly. IIRC.
KOKU.
Koku. Yeah, but that it's the year supply of rice.
Yes, it's 1 year. 1 koku is equal to 1 year's supply of rice, which in the case for us, it will be 1 year's food.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We're not going specifically only for that. So
of like base, like survival food.
Yeah, base survival food.
Fancy food. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got that. We're moving on. In this case, we are moving on to part 3. Or sorry, not part 3, part 2. So your role in your school. And question 3, what is your character's school and what roles does that school fall into? So this is sort of getting into if this game had a term for class, this is what we're kind of getting into here.
So I for now decided to go like straight through to the Isawa Elementalist school. So it's like the clan's families school. It's on page 75.
Yep. So Isawa Elementalist?
Yeah. I'm going to say Shugenja.
That absolutely drops you into the Shugenja role. So we're going to put that in there.
No tradition has a more complete mastery of the way of the spirits than that of the Isawa Elementalist school. Since the time before the kami fell to earth, the priests of the Isawa have sought knowledge and understanding of the kami, the fortunes, and the very elements themselves. Over the centuries, they have perfected the rituals and supplications to request great boons on behalf of the Phoenix clan, and terrible banes for casting down their enemies. Yet, they know that the spirits require service in exchange for their blessings, making the Isawa Elementalists hesitant to call upon the kami except in times of great need. To do so without cause is to risk upsetting the delicate balance of the natural world, or bring the wrath of the spirits upon them.
In this case, this means that you actually have some facility with code. You can hack. And in some ways, hacking can be seen as bringing you closer to spirits, but in other ways, hack indiscriminately and the spirits may turn on you. So in this case, the AI may understand that occasionally you're going to force through some things that are beyond standard programming, but at the same time, screw with it too much and they may decide to start making your life a little heavier. So as a result of this school, that means that you get to select 2 of any rings, 2 different rings, I should say, to increase.
I'm going with water and air. 1 of each, which you have to do 2 different ones. So at the moment I've got 2 void and 1 air, 1 water. No earth, no fire as of now.
Okay. Well, you get 1. You get 1. You start base.
Yeah. But
this also means that your starting honor is 40. And you get to increase some skills. You get to choose 3 skills to increase. So you have the choice between composition, courtesy, medicine, meditation, performance, and theology.
Composition. Sorry, I'm just going to go over these again. Composition, courtesy. Tracy's down there.
So composition, courtesy, medicine, meditation, performance, and theology. Now, theology, you already have 2 ranks in, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You may want more, but again, maybe choose what you kind of are interested in right now. And then when we look at the skills that you'll have later on, like the specific sort of also techniques that you'll have, you may want to choose to go back and see if there are ways to fix them up.
So one last time, it's composition, meditation, medicine, courtesy, theology?
Performance is
not
the
in
last
that
one.
order. Performance. So I have to choose 3.
3 of those. Do any of those kind of pop out immediately as something that you're like, oh yeah. Yeah, Kate is making a Zen programmer at the moment.
Yeah. I'm going to ditch performance for now.
Okay, performance is dropped.
I'm going to ditch the extra theology.
Okay.
I guess I just don't know whether Scott or Liz is interested in being more medicine focused or not.
Well, thankfully, this is easy to change.
Yeah, exactly. So at the moment, I'm going to ditch medicine.
Okay.
In case one of them wants to be more medicine focused. If that turns out neither of them are interested in covering it, I might shift something around.
Or just
that means-
make friends with a doctor.
Yep. Composition, courtesy, and meditation are the ones I'm choosing.
+1 composition, +1 courtesy, and +1 meditation.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm actually... This sheet isn't perfectly made, so it's not appearing great on the screen, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that. So the techniques that are available are invocations, rituals, and shuji.
Yep.
And then you get to choose some starting techniques. Now, you don't necessarily have to choose these techniques right now because you'd have to then go into those invocations and figure those out.
Them in detail, yeah.
Right. But you do start with commune with the spirits.
Yeah.
Not commune the spirits, and divination.
Yeah.
So you have both of those.
Yeah.
And then of your invocations that you choose, I mean, the weird thing is that they give you 4, so you're essentially choosing one of them not to know.
Yeah.
Composition, make good comments on your code. Absolutely. It's important to document your code.
God, so important.
So we won't worry about those right now if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back to them.
We may come back to it, so I'm just going to go 10. Sorry, I'm just changing my font size here so that I can squeeze that all in there. And then I'm going to...
Sure.
Boop.
And then we also have your school ability. So your school ability is one with the elements. So once per scene, when making the check to activate an invocation technique before rolling dice, you can reduce the target number of the check by your school rank. So target number in this case is sort of like your difficulty, using terms from Exalted. It's the number of successes that you need in order to succeed. So essentially you're starting off as rank 1. Which means that once per scene, you'll be able to reduce an invocation by 1. But then continue to grow, and you'll be able to reduce it by 5 or even 6, which means that some absolutely incredible abilities will be within your grasp. And then for your starting outfit, as much as this says a few things...
I'll use it for inspiration.
Absolutely. So you get sanctified robes, a wakizashi, which is a short sword, and you will have a short sword. Swords are a part of your thing. A knife, a scroll satchel, which will probably end up being like a
laptop or something.
Like an iPad or something.
Yeah.
And a traveling pack.
Sweet.
So we're going to leave those like this for now. And maybe when we come back, depending on how much time this takes, we can come back to here and we can start making changes to that. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
A cyber deck. That's true, because the other thing that I'll point out is that in this game, all samurai will have a skull jack. So that is a connection point located at the base of your skull. So you'll have that as well. So next up is another interesting question to me. And I think part of the reason they're asking these questions, even if you don't necessarily have the answers right away, is that it lets you either choose the mechanics and then the flavor follows, or you can choose the flavor and then let the mechanics kind of fall where they may. But remember that you don't have to answer the questions in order either. So how does your character stand out within their school? So this is going to be a ring increase.
Yeah, and so the options here, I'm just going to read them if that's okay.
Sure.
So your options are creativity, passion, or drive, which is fire. Grace, eloquence, or empathy, which is air. Adaptability, friendliness, or awareness, which is water. Thoroughness, patience, or calm, which is earth. Self-awareness, insight, or mysticism, which is void. I think I'm gonna go with water. The
Okay.
character's willingness to roll with the punches, gregariousness, or understanding of their environment stands out among their peers. They tend not to get stuck in mental ruts the same way many people do, or at least have ways to get out of them.
So is there a specific way that you want to represent this as part of your character?
Yeah, I'm just skimming some of the other, like the broader paragraphs here.
Sure. There is no problem with that. While you're having a look, it is interesting to me that part of the way that this game deals with rings is that some of it is mechanical and others of it is very much kind of like this more philosophical outlook or the like.
Yeah. So I guess it's the adaptability that is what stands out for me about this description of the water ring increase.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with that I'm thinking of a character who a lot of my characters have had very strong, solid, unshakable beliefs.
Right.
And I'm looking for someone who, for once, is not that way. Someone who can have their mind changed and can be tempted by a bribe or swayed by a threat. Someone that just, if we're going with exalted, like someone that has low integrity in that sense.
Right. And remember that exalted's integrity doesn't mean that you are, a bad person. It means that you don't necessarily stand up for your convictions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of that kind of adaptability, so you're saying that this is not just a positive, but also a negative for you in that way, that you could potentially be swayed even through, somewhat more nefarious means.
Yeah, and I think also that within like the group dynamic, someone makes a good point. Maybe I'll actually listen to them rather than being like, no, fuck you. I've already made up my mind. Because I feel like I've done that a lot and I should do something different.
Okay. And, honestly, that's a great reason to choose something for a character. I would say that 3 of your previous characters, Valeria, Patches, and Aresta, all had that, very strong will to slap down. So that does happen. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with having a type like that, but playing against your type can also be very rewarding. So, I like it. I like it a lot. The turtle points out here something that I want to highlight while we're doing this. I do like that L5R allows both bottom-up and top-down character design. I feel like a lot of systems focus too much on one, and as someone who doesn't purely use one method, it's nice. Sometimes I do want to make a badass swordsman and have the flavor flow, and sometimes I want to make an entertainer who has this background already thought out. And I agree. I do like the fact that you can go either way with this. I find that the game of 20 questions would probably work really well with some players. I think some people might bounce off it a bit because they just want to focus on the mechanics. But I think that if you use this character worksheet, it kind of shows you, here, I have to put your comment away here, the turtle. It does show you on the sheet, ring increase, 1, or back here, skill increases, ring increases. So it shows you where you're going to be able to make changes to your character sheet as well.
Yeah, and I find that even if you don't necessarily care as much about the flavor aspect of it, it's still like a quick sheet for you to go through. And even if you're just like, oh yeah, I want to have the most void because I'm going to be the void master, and that's the only reason why you choose them, it still helps you go through all of those steps and make sure that you do them all so that you don't skip one and miss out on extra skills or ring increases. So even if you just care about the crunch, or vice versa, if you're following it for the art, the fact that like the school ability isn't just like space for the title, there's room enough to type or handwrite the whole thing. Same thing with like, how does your character stand out within their school? Like there's space.
What stands out in your stool?
I'm going for the furniture item. I'm not going for the other option. But I appreciate it. Like, it's a 4-page, you can print it 2-sided, and I very well, honestly, I might, because this is my first time working within FFG's L5R, and I only played other L5R like a couple of times with a character that I think was handed to me. Having the long description of things, I think, is going to be useful for me. Specifically, like my school abilities and some of these other things that have room for me to type.
And as you get more familiar with this system, because obviously we're going to be doing some practice and stuff like that, you're probably going to be asked to go through these 20 questions again. But in this case, maybe when it says, how does your character stand out within their school, maybe there'll be, you'll actually have a sentence or two to actually talk about how your character may have distinguished themselves in the past.
Yeah.
Right? Just to fill in a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I haven't gotten as much into the person, but I think this, like, because I have the seed and I have like a direction that I want to go. And so I am finding that as we go through these additional steps now and are choosing things and putting them down, especially as I start filling out my skills and my rings, it's going to help me figure out who the person themselves is.
Right. And so in some ways, when you're dealing with an unknown setting, and in this case, it's by definition unknown because it doesn't exist yet, sometimes it is easier to go through mechanics first. All right. Moving on to part 3, Honor and Glory. Ta-da! Now, of course, one of the things is that honor will be spelt differently than the way I will spell it for the rest of this campaign. So if you really object to the letter U, tune out now, because this is the way that it's going to be. Part 3, Honor and Glory, and the question that is in front of you right now is, who is your lord, and what is your character's duty to them? So this is about your Giri. Now, we're not actually going to get into who specifically your lord is just yet. Instead, I'd rather go the another direction, and I want to ask, what kind of duty do you think that you would want to have? And do you have any idea about this at all?
Yeah, and just further into this section, because there's this printout for the 20 questions, but also the book itself basically goes through character creation in the same order. So it's like much longer form. And one of the things they say is they have some suggestions of what types of Giri there are. So for Shugenja, they might be given tasks suited to priests, researchers, librarians, warrior priests, shrine keepers, or spiritual advisors to daimyo. Rarely, they might be guards, artisans, or magistrates. So that information, as much as we're shifting into a different setting, I do find that useful to have sort of a sense of what the bigger umbrella of Shugenja is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's how your character acquires esteem in the eyes of their lord. And it's related to your role within the empire.
Mm-hmm.
So, what am I looking to do? To some extent, I'm wondering, like, I want to know what the rest of, because we had a brief chat about broad strokes of what we're looking for, but we didn't actually say, oh yeah, I want to be the healer. I know we have one that's a little more combat-y than I'm going to be, but I don't necessarily know like the more subtle aspects. I'm going first, so I'm allowed to say things, even if it has to change.
I mean, I specifically instructed all of my players to make the choices they wanted to make, and if we wanted to go back to things, we could. But I also recognize that sometimes it's just easier to be like, other people make choices, and then I take what's left, because then you don't have to worry about making the choice.
Yeah, I guess it's just like, I don't want to be like, yeah, I'm definitely the party healer, and it turns out someone else really wanted it, and I was just like, yeah, whatever, I'll be the healer, right? So figuring that out. But all of that aside, going back to this list, So part of the Phoenix clan, part of the Isawa family, Isawa, I think Isawa.
Yes, Isawa.
Yeah, is the principle of the Taoism of the doing without doing, the not pushing too far with what you're requesting from the spirits, or in this case, like the AI and the hacking. So it's like keeper of balance. It's not necessarily like following the laws or making sure that laws are followed so much as it's like community. There's a word, it's like a job that happens, community, not supervisor, caretaker, manager, community manager sort of thing, right? Where you aren't like the company or the group that is, there, but you're someone who
you are the customer facing section.
And even if like maybe, but even so, it's that maintaining balance and order. So it is, I feel like something like community manager, a moderator in Twitch chat, like that kind of. Obviously, this is a different universe, and I'm not going to be a fucking moderator in a Twitch chat. That's not my character.
I mean, that would be amazing.
Yes, I am a samurai, and I moderate like a chat. No, that's not why I have my greatest glory. But so I'm gonna go with community manager, but or keeper of peace, or
so. Written as wrote says public relations officer. Is it that perhaps it is your responsibility to help educate the common people of the I'm not going to say the glory of, but to educate them about the realities of the life that you live under these artificial intelligences?
Yeah.
So in a way, one of the things that I'd point out here is that for Shugenja, one of the things that's listed in L5R is a shrine keeper. And to me, the difference between a shrine keeper and a priest, say, is that a priest specifically is somebody who people go to for for consultation, for advice. They go to priests kind of deal with ceremonies of ceremonies of worship, ceremonies of the dead, ceremonies of marriage, whereas a shrine keeper is somebody who I'm picturing the sort of person who would be there, would help maintain access terminals, and then people but would also be somebody who would talk to people who would be visiting said access terminals to educate them. So I'm not saying that this is necessarily where you'd go, but I'd say that if we wanted to find the parallel, are you more of a priest or are you more of a shrine keeper?
I think shrine keeper.
Okay. So I'm going to put shrine keeper on my own list here.
I've got shrine keeper / the other things that we listed.
Right.
Since we're adapting into this new, so that I can remember in 3 weeks or whenever.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I meant by shrine keeper, what inspired that choice.
Because the interesting thing to me about this too is that this would mean that if you would have something that would keep you from your designated community or shrine, right? Then that would be something that would potentially put you in conflict with your Gidi, which is a big part of this game, is balancing the duty that you have and then the passions that you may also have.
And that's exactly that can be a useful thing. And also, is the shrine or the community a physical place, or is it something that is accessed through any access terminal, but I have to devote a certain amount of time to these tasks, and thus if something big is happening plot-wise and I have to ignore it, that's a thing that's pulling at me. So even if it's not I have to be stuck in this city all the time.
Right. And remember that it is possible for your lord to give you other things to do.
Yeah. Right.
It's not this is what you would be doing with the exception of the times that you are specifically acting against it. So we also have the turtle says librarian. To me, now again,
I don't think so, because to me that's more records keeper, and I don't think I'm not leaning in that direction at the moment. I'm looking at something that's a little bit more communicative.
A librarian to me is a steward of knowledge, right? It's knowing where the knowledge is kept, it's organizing the knowledge, and it is being able to produce that knowledge when necessary. But it isn't necessarily a public relations job. One of the interesting things about a library, and I'm diverting here because it's just something that I have a lot of experience with, is that people would call me a librarian, and I, despite having worked in a library for a decade, I was never a librarian. There are actually much fewer librarians. You have chips. Oh, I can't help but notice how many chips I have here on my desk, which is 0.
I was really hungry, so I grabbed them before the stream, but then I didn't have time to actually eat any.
Did you get any of the whipped cream cheese that is in the fridge? When you visit a library, the number of actual librarians who works there is probably much smaller than you think. There are library clerks, there are archivists, but a librarian is somebody who has a master's degree in library sciences. So it's really kind of a huge shift as to what a librarian is. They're often not very public facing at all. And often a lot of librarians end up working for like corporations to handle their records and their the collection of their knowledge as well. So I think this works out. A community manager, shrine keeper. We can always come back to this. We do have a whole bunch more questions, and we're coming up on the halfway point. So shall we keep going?
Yes.
I think that some of these questions are going to start getting pretty fast.
Yeah, I think so. Like when we covered some broad strokes at the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're now moving on to kind of the complementary question for this, which is, what does your character long for, and how might this impede their duties? So this is you selecting your ninjo.
Mm-hmm.
Your ninjo is your passion, essentially.
Yeah. Your human feelings, and yeah, specifically, like it's a goal in a way, or it's a dream, even if it's not like a real goal. It's something that you daydream about, something that, human feelings, personal desire, ideal, or question that is core to the character.
Right.
What will test their honor, and it can cause problems. So there's things like creating a future with the person you love, become the greatest duelist in the empire, creative work of art that wins eternal praise, discover your true parentage, become the captain of a ship. So it could potentially be a real goal that you're striving for, at least in my interpretation, or it could be the thing that you long for, but you know you can't or shouldn't because of your duty.
Yeah. The main thing that you shouldn't be picking are things that are just absolutely fits with, like, I want to be a good samurai. Like,
yeah.
Ugh. I'm just going to answer this quickly. Aramithius, you ask, what is a librarian in a context that doesn't have dedicated degree programs for it? The way that I would see it is, if you're a librarian, you're spending most of your time actually doing the cataloging, the archiving, the understanding, and not serving people. So that would be the difference. Not necessarily the person you actually talk to. So do you have an idea of something that you kind of want? This is sort of like the idea of a character goal. Become the best poke trainer.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm wondering if there's someone who is happy to serve and understands the balance and understands the importance of that balance and the importance of maintaining shrines, whatever those become in our context.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if they strive for recognition beyond just thanks, that was really helpful. So like possibly to the point of having a shrine in their name or in their honor. I don't. Again, it depends on what we consider shrines to be in this context.
So the shrines specifically are to
Mhm.
the artificial intelligences.
Okay, specifically to them.
So it could be specifically that you are hoping to elevate your consciousness to the cloud.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are PhD programs in information and library science, definitely. So the question that I would have then is, how would the concept of I want to elevate my consciousness to the cloud? So in other words, I want to become a part of the sort of nebulous artificial world consciousness above you. And how would that put you in conflict with your duty?
I guess to me, that phrasing of it feels like it's not conflict inducing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how important, like, I guess we haven't necessarily nailed down what it means to upload your consciousness to the cloud or whatever. Because to me, that just sounds like, oh, well, I'm retiring or like, I'm moving to a different phase of existence. I'm evolving.
Right.
And I think it's specifically about standing out. That is the driving force. And that is not, you're supposed to serve your master. Mm-hmm. And particularly within the Phoenix clan, within the Isawa family, it's about maintaining order and balance. It's about being a support, whereas I feel like there's a desire to stick out.
Is it a desire for fame?
A certain degree of it, yeah. Not like world fame per se, but significant recognition.
Okay, so is it a desire for? I'm gonna ask a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just tell me if this is getting pedantic. Is it about power? Not necessarily power like ultimate cosmic power. I'm talking about.
I don't think so.
So it's not like you're angling for that promotion.
I mean, it depends, because there are so many reasons why people want promotions, right? There's the bigger salary. There is, I can do more. I have more control. There's feeling recognized for the good that you have done.
Getting to tell other people what to do.
Like, there are so many different facets to that. So it's not necessarily so that's a bit of a broad scope. I think it's something closer to fame, if we're going to try to narrow it down to like fame, fortune, and happiness, or whatever the fuck that game was. Yeah. Is it
fame? Is it notoriety?
I don't necessarily know at this point whether they care. I don't know whether it's at any means necessary, and I feel like that's something that is a journey throughout the campaign.
One of the reasons why some people desire fame is because they didn't feel they got enough recognition growing up, right? Like the idea that no matter what I accomplished, I was ignored or shunted aside.
I don't think it's through resentment.
Okay. Is it perhaps that when you achieved a certain amount of recognition, you craved more?
I don't write that as a question, but I don't have an answer.
Hey, I don't think we're going to come up with a definitive answer today. Like, I just don't think that that's possible, because I think a lot of it is also going to depend on the characters that Scott and Elizabeth come up with, right? Like, yeah, that's going to make some changes.
To me, it's their role is the maintenance and the upkeep. They're the gardener rather than the person who owns the garden, or like they're not the person who people turn to and say, wow, what a beautiful garden. That they say that to someone else, rather than like the help. And I feel like my character is the help of the garden, rather than the person that gains the esteem.
So it's a wish to be elevated above their station?
I don't know. I think we can go in circles for this for another hour. So I think I'm going to say I have a sense of what I mean.
Sure.
I have some notes and we can dig into that.
Yeah, I think that we'll be able to dig into it also when we start creating exactly what you do. Because when we create the setting, kind of like the home base that we'd been talking about.
Yeah.
then it'll be easier for us to figure out where that might fit in.
Mhm.
We do definitely need to be able to define your ninjo, but we don't have to define it now.
Okay, so how specific does it have to be defined? Because there's like, I want to be the captain of a ship. I guess that's pretty specific.
It's more like I have to know and be able to say, I can put something in front of you as a temptation for your ninjo.
Yeah.
As opposed
so then
to
I guess,
your giri.
yeah, we need to have a half-hour conversation about the specifics of what fame means or recognition means.
Yeah. And I think that, like I said, a lot of it is going to depend on the other characters and in the setting that we come up with. So I'm totally comfortable not answering this question right now, but I'm getting the broad strokes of what you're looking for. And I think that makes, and that definitely is a ninja, right? A samurai isn't necessarily devoid of recognition, but they're expected to serve.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you're saying here is that your ninja is not about serving necessarily.
It's not a resentment of all the things that are served or the facts of like they're interested in like their task, and they like respect and they feel well placed and well suited to their duty. But it's that longing for more.
Right. And I think that makes a certain amount of sense. So happy with that answer. Shall we move on?
Yeah. Yep.
Great. So the next question that we have to ask, is what is your character's relationship with their clan? Now, in the book, this specifically is...
Yeah, there's two options.
Yeah, there's two options. So do you believe in the precepts of your clan? Or do you have a fundamental disagreement with your clan's beliefs, policies, or practices, and you've defied them in the past?
And so it's more glory, or it's getting a skill that you have no training in, which, I am going to sort of briefly glance at...
Yeah, I'd recommend looking at the character sheet to look at the different skills available, because that is a very interesting question. Glory is not nothing. Glory does matter. But the idea that, and just because you've had a fundamental disagreement with your clan in the past, that doesn't mean that your clan immediately views you with suspicion or that you hate your clan. But it does mean that there's just elements of your clan that you have very specifically not just been like, cool, I'll roll with this.
I think my character is going to be more in line with the clan for now.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with +5 glory.
Not +6 glory, +5 glory. Sorry, I'm writing it down as well. And it was like dirt. Okay, so character is in line with the clan. I kind of got that impression based on how you were talking about the clan beforehand. So I'd say that this, if I had to choose for you, this would have been the choice I would have made. So cool. Great. Next up is, what does your character think of Bushido?
Like the concept overall.
Right. So let's go. Shall we go and do a quick Bushido?
Just what
look
the
at?
Principal tens were.
Awesome. Let's have a look at
what page is that?
Bushido. You can find that on page 13.
I thought it was somewhere really early on.
Yeah.
it's
on the bookmarks. It's the Code of Bushido.
It's an introduction. I'm not far enough back. Great. So there's compassion, courage, courtesy, duty and loyalty, honor, righteousness, and sincerity.
And the reason why I think they're asking this question that we are looking at here, specifically the book says, all samurai are supposed to respect and venerate the Code of Bushido. And as we've made clear, the AI basically have established Bushido as the ideal way in which humanity should operate for the greatest amount of peace, right?
Yeah, so I think my character is going to believe in it, specifically acting as like a community manager or a shrine keeper and someone who believes in the balance of all things, I feel like they're more likely to be in line with that than to push back against it.
So in this particular case, then you believe in living by an orthodox interpretation of Bushido?
I think so at this time.
And again, we can change that later. So in that case, you're getting plus 10 honor.
I'm going to be so honorable. That's okay. I'll throw it all away soon.
Well, remember that you had the prior question was about glory, not honor.
Yeah, still. I feel like I'm...
So you basically believe that Bushido is super cool.
Orthodox interpretation.
Cool. Well, that ends part 3. We're moving on to part 4, which is a part that I find quite interesting, which is your strengths and weaknesses. So what's your character's greatest accomplishment so far? Now, I think that in this section, it is very possible that we will not have direct answers yet. But I am asking these things just if there's a specific idea that you would like to throw out there, you can. But also, when you are, when we've asked this question, you're going to pick, you are going to pick a distinction advantage that was key to accomplishing this success. And distinctions are one of those things that will help you as you progress in the game itself. That's on page 101 is where the distinctions start being discussed. And they include things like ally, ambidexterity.
Right, okay. Ally,
blackmail on someone. So there's a lot here.
Yeah.
Hey, Pukajutsu.
Hello, thank you for the resub.
You should also go check out Pukajutsu's streams. He is raising money for the American Heart Association.
Nice.
And met his goal today. I helped.
Nice.
Met his goal today, and so therefore he had to change his Final Fantasy XIV character from a cat boy into a bunny boy.
Scandale.
Escandalo. So,
I mean, yeah.
There's a lot here, and maybe it's not necessarily worth it for you because there's several pages of distinctions that you may be able to find. So it may be worth it for us to look at this at another time. But instead, I'm going to ask, do you have any idea at all about what your greatest accomplishment might be?
Yeah, because I'm just quickly scrolling through these, and they basically, a lot of them are, you get a bonus to a specific check. So I feel like it'll be really easy to choose.
Yeah, in fact, they all have a bonus to specific checks.
So to me, it's that they quelled dissent or maintained order in a particularly...
during a tense time.
Yeah, tense. Because I was going to say it's not like necessarily dangerous, but yeah.
Like he didn't come in and crack skulls during a protest, but perhaps you helped ease this tension. And brought peace. Yeah,
like shifted or like pushed a certain narrative to the forefront to like pull back the anger that was quelling or something like that, right?
Right.
Something like that. And I know we don't have a ton of time, but
we got plenty of time.
Be right back.
Yeah, sure.
Vamp. If
anybody has any questions while we're waiting, then now is definitely a good time to throw them out there because I will be right here. I like a lot of you, most of you. No, I like y'all. If you're here, I'm happy and I appreciate it. But yeah, if you do have questions, now's a good time to throw it out there. I'm also, I gotta say, Pukajutsu's stream today was awesome. I had it on in the background. How has my day been? My day's been pretty good. It was productive, which kind of helps. And it required a lot of my focus. So my mind's been going quite a bit today, but honestly, I'm kind of okay with that. Like, who couldn't use some extra focus of mind? So Kung Fu Fenris asks, have you figured out a good way to differentiate the castes of society? So in Legend of the Five Rings, as written, there are people. So there are those who serve, who are the samurai. There are those who work, who are also known as haimin, or half people, who are peasants who keep the nation running by cultivating the land, crafting the tools and implements of daily life, transporting those goods. And then there are those who do not belong, who are burakumin, or hamlet people, or also sometimes known as hinin, or non-people. The concept of this will still exist. I think that there's sometimes I see some misinterpretations about those who work, and that they are completely downtrodden and unhappy all the time, and I don't believe that that's true. Where it says seldom permitted to carry weapons, I mean, I'm not permitted to carry a weapon when I'm just wandering around outside on the street, right? Like,
yeah.
So the concept, however, that we have, one thing that I will say that we have kind of decided on is this idea that a samurai is a samurai because part of the thing that kind of identifies them as a samurai is their skulljack. And if at some point they decide that they are no longer honorable enough to be a samurai, they can remove their skulljack. And by doing so, not only are they removing a lot of the teachings of their techniques from their schools, they're also drastically altering their memory at the same time. It is the equivalent of ending your life as a samurai, and you become a member of the third class, a member of the underworld, because you no longer have connection to the AI, to the cloud. You don't have that available to you. So the idea of those who do not belong, so the lowest caste, they don't have access to the AI at all. They don't have that ability. So that's kind of where I'm leaning for that right now. At any rate, you are back. So we've answered question 9. And I feel like question 9, I like that idea, and I think that we can work together to find out the specifics of that. But it seems like you're somebody who values peace. And in a way, I find that this might also tie into your concept of you don't always want to be, obstinate, stuck in your ways, stubborn, that you would rather flow with what is required in a moment as opposed to define what is required in the moment.
And I find that might flow really well into the next question.
All right, well, let's see what that next question is. What holds your character back the most in life?
And so mine is that they're unwilling to stick their neck out in a way that has any risk of their looking bad. When they're sure that like this is their duty, this is their job, they're going to do it. But if it's like, well, if I do this, I might really make my lord happy. But if I screw this up, I'm definitely going to be in trouble. More likely to just do nothing, or to like offer the thought to someone else to accomplish.
Right.
And like,
I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
In a way, I think that we'll be able to come up with an adversity for that as well. Because one of the things is that it gives you specific rules on creating advantages and disadvantages. And I think that if there isn't one that fits for that, we'll find one for you. Because one thing that I will say is that you are a samurai, right?
Yeah.
It's not like some random person come up and be like, hey, can you kill your lord for me? And you'll be like, yep.
No.
Right? Like you're not a total pushover. But
No.
really like this concept that like you don't want to look bad. And you don't and standing up for yourself risks, like taking a stand, making a definitive point slots you into a thing, which means that somebody may end up then saying, well, then I do not like you.
Yeah.
Then I oppose you.
Yeah.
And
There's
some
a weasel
people,
or a rat or whatever. Yeah.
right. Some people, it's easy to be like, yes, I oppose you, right? Like you can oppose, say, a murderer, but
Yeah.
Somebody who is just trying to live their life and isn't really hurting anybody, but at the same time is disobeying a law.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little harder to be against that person.
Yeah.
Okay, I really like that. We'll come up with a diversity for that later on. For now, we can move on to what activity most makes your character feel at peace.
So again, depends on what our universe ends up being. But as someone who tends, like as a shrine keeper, I feel like the equivalent of gardening. So whether that's tidying lines of code, or taking code that someone else has written and making it more efficient, or whether it's literally garden keeping, or something. So
gardening specifically,
and restoring the shrine, like repainting, repairing chipped.
Because there's things like
corners.
the specific passions that are listed here, and again, we can.
They have specifics. Great.
Yeah, there's things like brushwork, fashion, curiosity, daredevil. So the idea of brushwork, for instance, it says you can identify the signature styles of numerous different schools and individual artists, and after performing a check to study or practice brushwork, you remove 3 strife. So these are ways that you shed strife. It's basically what calms you down. You can straight up go for sake. But
Ikebana.
Ikebana is flower arranging. So I think
it's going to be Ikebana. It may not be flowers. It may be arranging code, right? It may be something.
Ooh.
Right? So I'm going to go with Ikebana, which is page 113.
It's 113.
That.
Which means that you can always identify a plant by any of its parts, its physical properties, and its Hanakotoba, which we can also change, right? Because you're allowed to come up with your own. And then after performing a check related to flower arrangement, you can remove 3 strife.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool idea. I think that works quite well. Nice. Which moves us on to question 12. What concern, fear, or foible troubles your character the most? So this is a focus on what the game calls anxiety. So you have meekness, where you're extremely shy and you struggle to stand up for yourself. It could be paranoia. It could be soft-heartedness. So in a way, this is something that we might be able to look at to really focus in on that feeling of your character of not being able to commit.
I'm just quickly checking delusions of grandeur. But I think that's believing you are, and it's more aspirations of grandeur that's going back.
Delusions of grandeur is that you believe you already.
Exactly. So it's
not only do you believe that you're destined for greatness, it's fated for you.
Impatience flaw. No, I won't do that. Irrepressible flirtation. Oh man.
So the other thing is that you don't have to focus everything on this one part of your character concept. Right. You can be somebody who is like somebody who's perhaps easily influenced, but you may also have irrepressible flirtation.
Just quickly checking these. I'm leaning towards meekness, but I'm going to look further into it. So that's 1, 3, 4.
All right. So I'm going to put meekness with a question mark here.
Yeah.
Meekness? Painful honesty, otherwise known as the asshole.
What was it? The knave, I think it is in Changeling, that you will never spare someone from a harsh truth. But putting that into actual words, concern fear troubles me the most. What was I most worried about?
Isn't that
losing...
your trouble is that you are a fear of not being liked?
Because at the moment, like what I've just written down is losing face is what they're worried about.
Okay.
And I know that that's they'd rather sit in the back of the boat than risk rocking it, sort of thing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool things here that we can look at, but also we can create we can create disadvantages, right? So we may look into that.
I've got a note saying review in more detail.
Yep, no problem there. But it's good to start thinking about these sorts of things. I do really like this element of the character creation that, you know, there's things that you're good at, things that you want, things that you're bad at, and things that worry you. And I think all of those are cool to think about. And then finally, in this section of part 4, who has your character learned the most from during their life?
Yeah.
Now this comes with a mechanical change.
So page 93.
So the turtle says, I still like how 4th ed handles these a little better, but 5th ed is good because you have a set number you have to take, and you don't get to take 20 just for extra min-maxing. Yeah, the game does specifically put limits on the number of things that you can have.
Okay, and you gain an advantage and a disadvantage. So that's something that I'll read. And a rank in a skill that you developed as a result of this relationship. So I'm just going to say, see page 93. And then
so you either gain an advantage or you gain a disadvantage and a rank in a skill.
I see.
And disadvantages are either anxieties or adversities.
Yeah. But I think my instinct, which is maybe obvious, but it's whoever the Shrine Keeper was that they took over for, because I am assuming that this is a traditionalist society, that as much as we're in the future, you know, there have been this technology in this world we live in has been established for a while, which is why it's got such core and solidified values. Bushido wasn't invented like 30 years ago.
No, it has not. Despite the recording that we made, we did that very, very quickly.
Yeah. Whatever. It was
the timeline,
it was a way
to
give a hint. Yeah. So for now, you know, previous Shrine Keeper who
a different Shugenja.
Maybe oops, what did I just do? Who's maybe like a grandparent or a great uncle.
So someone you were related to.
Maybe. I mean, I assume they would have been another Isawa anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like, I mean, that's really obvious. It's like, oh, who do you learn the most from? The person who taught me, you know, how to use my sword, because I'm a sword master. But I also feel like with this interest in balance and maintenance and tending to the garden, I think there is that desire to be connected to someone else who understands that. Someone that doesn't care about, you know, being a great swordsman or a courtier merchant, right? Like, it's finding that commonality. So
yeah,
that's my instinct.
I don't think that that's necessarily a problem, choosing the obvious mentor choice,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine, right?
Yeah.
It's an obvious choice because it is a very good choice to make. And we can kind of flesh out that mentor a little bit later on.
Yeah. And that's something we often do in session zeros, even. You'd give us like a scene from our past or whatever.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably end up doing that. And I think that maybe at this time, we may not necessarily want to pick whether you want an advantage or a disadvantage and a skill rank, just because we haven't even picked the advantages or disadvantages before.
Exactly.
So when going through, if you're like, oh, I like 2 of these advantages, great.
Yeah.
Take them both. If you're like, I think 2 of these disadvantages would work for me, great. Choose that instead. Which leads us to part 5. Part 5 is about personality and behavior. What do people notice first upon encountering your character? So this is a personality, habits, or quirks sort of situation. So you might stand out for your unusual looks, strange dress, ancestry that can be traced to far-flung parts of the Emerald Empire, even beyond, in the case of some families. It could be a minor behavior like chewing your lip when you're nervous or clasping your hands to hide trembling fingers. Maybe the character always says the same thing when meeting a stranger. All these things add subtle depth to the character, and so does a deliberate absence of memorable details.
Yeah.
So,
I think this might need to sit in creating who this person is a bit more.
Sure.
Just thinking on it for a moment, though.
And this is the sort of thing that, yes, you will have to answer, but you don't have to answer now. This might be something that you will learn to answer more as you play your character. This is a role-playing aid, and that's not necessarily something that you need. You kind of find your character as you go through, right? Like,
yeah, like I have figured out how to play characters. This isn't like my first.
This ain't your first rodeo.
And the thing is, it's nice, right? It's really useful for that. At the moment, I'm gonna say like they're meticulous about their attire / like cleanliness or whatever.
Okay.
And like then, not like an obsessive or like, oh god, my hands are dirty, I have to go
Sophia
wash them.
level.
It's more like, oh yeah, like I have a very straight part down my hair, or I always like gel it or brush it the same way, or make sure the tie is always straight, or maybe does like a fancy tie knot, or certain things like has a pocket square, like little. Obviously, none of these are going to apply in this universe that we're going to be living in, but that kind of thing.
And that's fine.
For now, it's like the first layer I'm going to throw out there, and I'll find more, I'm sure.
It does ask that you choose one distinctive aesthetic accoutrement that your character carries or wears most of the time, like a scarf, hair ornament, engraved scabbard, eye patch, codpiece.
I feel like I want to get a bit more of a feel for our universe before I pick that. I'm very happy to pick one. But
so why don't we just let it go?
Like it might be if everyone's got an iPad, it might be their iPad case, or if everyone has like a skull jack, it might be the way that they wear their hair around it, or a tattoo around it, or something, right? Like I feel like there's lots of options there.
You know those charms that you can get for mobile phones?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like maybe somebody will have like something that they stick into their skull jack when it's not in use, and it just has a little charm hanging from the
like
base of it.
Saver, it keeps the dust out.
All right, then let's move on to question 15. How does your character react to stressful situations? Although samurai are supposed to maintain proper decorum and conceal their emotions, few of them are truly able to control their feelings at all times. Even the most stoic and rigidly self-controlled samurai occasionally lets out a true sign of feeling, especially when they are being berated by their lord or treated disrespectfully by their subordinates. What emotions does your character show, and why? What events or feelings can make them lose their self-control? Conversely, what emotions can they always control, no matter what? Describe a noteworthy physical response that your character has during times of stress and note it under the personality, habits, and quirks section of the character sheet. As your character's strife approaches their composure, your character might display this behavior, and it could play a part anytime they unmask.
So I appreciate that they included that, like, there's what are things that they like, situations where they don't flinch in. And so I want to say that, like, work stress, when they're just like busy or they have a lot of work to do, or there's like, oh, this needs to be done fast, I don't necessarily know whether they would have a strong reaction to that. Whereas it's social stressors, like, again, with the whole losing face or looking poorly or something, that I think is a situation in which they might have stronger reactions. And I also think, I don't necessarily think my character like goes into fights every day, so I also don't think they'd necessarily react, super cool in every fight.
So this is another one of those role-playing aids. You'll be able to figure it out. You'll be able to put it down on your sheet when you feel like you've got a good idea for it, because the actual physical manifestation of it is something else, right? So I don't think we have to fill this out right now, but it is something for you to think about as we move forward. The turtle mentions, this would be a good spot, I think, referring to question 14. This would be a good spot to add flavor that your character has cyberware.
Yeah.
Now, one thing is, all characters will have cyberware. Every one of them. The Skulljack is cyberware, but there may be more, and it will be flavor purposes only, right? We're very specifically, very deliberately not adding a whole lot of rules on top of this game to reflect things like, I have a cybernetic arm. Like, you basically have the same thing. Now, it's possible that we might come up with an advantage or a disadvantage.
You got a +1 cybernetic arm, right?
Like an advantage or a disadvantage. Maybe you have a distinction that represents cyberware that you have, right? And I'd be completely okay with that as long as it followed those rules. Yeah. Because there's a pattern that you choose with those. So that might be an interesting thing to look into. But unless it's specifically like that, like, we're not coming up with the idea of like, okay, well, what stats does a railgun have in this universe? They don't exist. You will not use them. But cyberware is a great idea. So I'm already getting an idea of how your character may accumulate strife and it's situations under which your character may unmask. And the interesting thing is that unmasking in this game can be like, as subtle. It's not subtle, but like, it could be that you desperately confess your love for someone, but unmasking could also be that you just sort of like go blank, turn around and run, right?
Yeah.
Like,
fuck. Or it can be like that you laugh uproariously, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to be like, cool, level-headed, calm, and contained. So if you like laugh yourself to tears, that's also unmasking.
Absolutely. It is also important to note in this game that there is a difference between the behavior when you're alone and behavior when you're in public and behavior when you're with certain people.
Like in court or like, with a certain...
One of the things that's really interesting in this game is that we were talking about the castes of people. There are people who are kind of essential to a samurai's life. Because they're not considered people, you can't lose honor by hanging out with them.
Yeah, that's the geisha. Are they described as geisha in this game as well? Yeah. And so, to me, those may be like literal robots. I don't know what our distinction is going to be, whether anyone who's 100% cybernetic or whether there's like a type of robot that doesn't count, and that's why you can't lose face. But I don't know if you have thoughts.
It could be that because we do have the concept of synths, which we'll get into when we discuss another person's character creation. But it could be that there are we already know that there's a stage 1 and a stage 2 synth. There may be stage 0 synths. Yeah.
Right. And those are like, the bartender or whatever.
The sex bot.
I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, but that's where you were going.
No.
Okay.
But so I feel like that feels like an easy way to create that sort of class of people. Yeah. Is that they're like no AI. sort of, they're just a machine that does a thing. Input, command, output, result.
Right.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Fighters, sorry, yeah, that is what I mean when I mentioned that we're not coming up with rules for a railgun.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking and adapting existing rules for it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to create a railgun
Yeah,
weapon.
and power balance it on its own, or try to be realistic to, oh, well, obviously a railgun would have like plus 28. Like, no, fuck that.
We are very deliberately not adhering to realism for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up. Realism is realism is a very specific kind of game that you can play, and it's impossible. You'll never actually get realism, but that's not to say that you can't strive for a simulation-esque game. This is not it. Number 16, what are your character's pre-existing relationships with other clans, families, organizations, and traditions? So, in this particular case, a character is exposed to many other groups during their life in numerous ways, like diplomacy, marriage alliances, trade, wars, and travel may bring a person into contact with groups that they do not belong to, at least initially. What other groups has your character been exposed to, and what impression have these exposures left? Is your character betrothed or married to a member of another family or clan? Did they marry into that family or clan and suddenly need to acclimate to a very different set of expectations, etc., etc.? So this is the sort of thing that you and I will discuss when we are kind of going over the characters. And also this may include elements of Scott and Liz's backstories
how
too,
we know
right?
each other.
So I don't necessarily want to come up with everything here, but these are ideas of like, I would love to hear if there were things that you did well or things that you did poorly with other people. And you get to choose one item of rarity 7 or lower that your character received as a gift from one such group, took in battle fighting against them, or that otherwise relates to or symbolizes your past and your ongoing relationship with them. And we'll add that to your starting outfit. So you'll be able to look through and see if there's an item that you want, and we'll add it to your sheet.
Sweet.
We're coming close to the end here, especially because
I feel like we're pretty much on time, right? Like we're 3/4 of the way through, and we're 3/4 of the way through our time. We're actually more than that because that was fast.
Yep.
So
well,
like,
the
we'll
last
deal
few
with it
questions are going to be a lot of like, we don't necessarily have to come up with this now. A lot of this is the mechanics that we're looking at, but we are still going to fill out your sheet after this is finished so that we'll get a chance to see what your actual character sheet will look like. How would your character's parents describe them? Parental devotion is an expected virtue in a land where the family, not the individual, is the repository of honor and reputation. However, despite this ideal, there are plenty of samurai who have a fractious relationship with their parents, or who offer outward veneration while concealing a lack of respect. Does your character have a proper relationship with their parents, or are they estranged? Was the character's childhood a happy one? Were they a torment to their parents, or vice versa? Are their parents still alive? So we're going to record the nature of your relationship with your character and your parents or immediate family members. And then you'll gain 1 rank of 1 skill in which your character has 0 ranks, and determine whether your characters approve or regret this extracurricular interest. Dun-na. So are there other skills? If you have a look at the character sheet, are there any skills that you're like, oh, I think this could be interesting to have, and you don't have any ranks in it yet?
Let's find out. So I don't have much of anything. I mean, I guess I have 4, but yeah.
You have ranks in skills, the turtle. I don't know if you mean by low skills and high skills in terms of like honor. No. That does not exist. If people want to see the skills, why don't I pop them up for people to have a look at quick?
Yeah, so there are artisan skills of aesthetics, composition, design, and smithing. Martial skills of fitness, martial arts, melee, ranged, or unarmed, meditation, or tactics. Scholar skills of culture, government, medicine, sentiment, theology. Social skills of command, courtesy, games, and performance. Trade skills of commerce, labor, seafaring, skullduggery, and survival.
So seafaring is one that we are going to have to also discuss. Seafaring may also include not just ships, but also airships or even space.
Or travel broadly. Yeah.
Orbital travel, right, Kung Fu Fenris? Yeah. So do any of these skills immediately pop out at you as like, oh shit?
Well, with the interest in Ikebana, I can see easily picking aesthetics or design. But I also, if one of our other characters is like, I really want to be a crafter, then like I don't care. Like it's not a big yes. It's a I could explain this or accept it. Should we have combat skills?
So you are a Shugenja, right? Which means that you are going to have, in terms of, so one of the ways that this game kind of puts it out is that they call them techniques, right? So that kata, kiho, you have access to invocations, rituals, and shuji. Now, you will most likely experience situations in which combat can occur. However, this is not a game like Exalted.
Yeah.
So here's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
In Exalted, everyone is expected to be able to fight specifically as a warrior. Now, one thing that I will point out is that in L5R, samurai are expected, like you have a sword, you're given a sword. But there are things like, there may be situations in which you may be set upon by a group of thugs, but there may be situations in which you're expected to duel someone, and you may not be the one to take the duel. It could be one of your friends, right? So imagine in Changeling, there were definitely combat situations in which, for instance, Sophia was a lot less effective because she only had access really to her magic and had no combat skills at all. Well, towards the end of the game, Sophia was not really a pushover in combat anymore.
Yeah, like many systems.
Right, but she also
swords
never really invested a whole lot into brawl, melee, or firearms, right?
No.
So some of this is going to depend on what you choose as part of your techniques as a Shugenja. I will say that you may want to make sure that you aren't absolutely hopeless in battle, but I don't necessarily think that that you're like, oh well, if I don't invest at least 3 skill levels in this, I'm screwed. I don't think that that's the situation that you're going to encounter. So you may want to consider, depending on the invocations and stuff that you pick, maybe one of your skill levels should go to at least like 1 level of melee so that you at least can like defend yourself with a sword.
But until I guess I look into those invocations, I'm going to pass on that.
Sure.
So I think I wonder about commerce, because like being someone who's like a merchant is actually like really low class because you're just profiting off of other people's work. And I wonder if there's some element of, I don't know.
I realize now I totally should have not mirrored my screen because when I'm trying to look at you, I'm looking away from you. Whoops. Yeah. All right, next time.
Yeah, so I just feel like...
So we're not sure how your characters feel about you just yet.
Well, my parents, if it goes back to my parents, I feel like there's a subtle hint of disappointment or disdain that they say, like, they tend to their duties well. You know, it's like they do their job well, but they haven't impressed us. They haven't done anything big to earn our family honor.
You're referring to this character as they at the moment. Is that because at the moment you're not sure?
I haven't decided.
Okay.
I haven't figured out who this person is. So.
No problem. Question.
Also, I binary gendered someone who they thems today, so I need to work on my they thems. So be better.
Question 18. Who is your character named to honor?
Yeah.
Now, this specifically calls into play. Why do I have Changeling open? Go away. Who's your character named to honor? When receiving or choosing a name at their coming-of-age ceremony, many samurai adopt a name that honors a recent or particularly noteworthy ancestor.
Mm-hmm.
In the Empire, using a portion of an ancestral name combined with other syllables to change its meaning is one common practice for many families. Whose name is your character derived from? What was meant by the bestowal of this name? So, in this case, there is a chart.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is not about a chart to roll what the name is. It's a chart to roll what the name is specifically. So, the chart, I'm actually going to... can I actually bring this up on chat yet? Not necessarily. But anyway, so there are modifiers here.
Mm-hmm.
These are things like one of your ancestors performed a famous deed or a glorious sacrifice, a wondrous work, a dynasty builder, discoverer, ruthless victor, elevated for service, stolen knowledge, imperial heritage, and you also gain some other effects. It'll increase or decrease your glory or honor, and it'll also have some other effects like being able to earn a specific item or getting another skill or whatever. Now, the game suggests that you roll for this.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that you can roll for it if you want, but you definitely do not have to.
All right. Well, I've rolled a virtual dice roller.
So what dice did you come up with?
I got an 8 and a 2, which would bring me to
glorious sacrifice or stolen knowledge. And you would pick one of these, by the way.
Oh, I thought it was you roll the first and then you go to the next one because it's like stolen knowledge and then roll a 10-sided die again to determine the category.
So
that's my understanding.
It depends here. So this specific one says in the Samurai Heritage, so you roll 2 dice, choose one of the 2 options as the relative, and then you roll a 10-sided die again, because in the other effects, you would then roll a 10-sided die again. So here, the first 2 dice that you roll, you get to choose 2 of these results between 2. And then you roll a 10-sided die and you get to choose, and you get what is said in there. I am going to tell you that you can either do this randomly, which I'm fine with, or you can, I'm going to let you also just pick if you would prefer. So in this particular case, some of it is, oh, you definitely want a rank in this skill, and therefore you have to pick 5, right? In which case you increase your glory by 3, and then you pick one of those skills and you get +1 rank.
Yeah.
You could pick unusual name origin, where you decrease your glory by 3, and then you choose 2 of your rings. One of them goes down by 1, one of them goes up by 1, right? So you can choose this. This is basically a way for you to manipulate elements of your sheet by also tying in who you were, who you decided to name yourself after, right? Yeah. So we don't have to make this choice now.
Yeah.
But it is there for you. I'm just saying that for character creation, for our purposes, you will not have to roll randomly if you do not wish.
Great.
But you are also welcome to.
Yeah.
If that's what you would prefer. So number 19, what is your character's personal name? And this is the name that you have chosen to be known by. And it might be the same name, but it could be a difference, or it could be like a it could be a nickname, that kind of thing. If you're in official society, it'll be your proper family name with the appropriate honorific, but then some people will refer to you by your personal name.
I do not have a name yet.
Yep, I didn't think you would.
Yeah,
you're still getting to know this.
Yeah,
character.
once I know who my character is, I feel like I'll be able to get a name that isn't too weeb-like.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. We have to determine for us what sort of language we're going to end up using. Are we going to continue using most of the game terms that exist, in which case maybe you'll want to choose names that sort of fit in with that aesthetic? Or are we going to eliminate those, in which case you can choose whatever name you may wish? I'm kind of fine either way.
Yeah.
So that'll be a discussion that we'll have to have with the other players. So I don't actually recommend that you pick a name right now.
Yeah.
And here is the final question in this game of 20 questions. So up until this point, your sheet is complete. Although it's not, because there were parts that we skipped over, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But here's the question, the last question of the game, which I can't scroll down to reveal. So instead, I'm just going to pull it out here, because I already put them all in here as custom messages. Question 20 is, how should your character die? All proper samurai fully expect to die. Actually, can you read it? Do you have it in front of you?
No, I just have the question.
All right. All proper samurai fully expect to die in the service of their lord. And it is said that every samurai lives at all times 3 feet from death, the length of a katana blade. However, some deaths have more meaning than others, and there are plenty of samurai whose outward facade of courage hides a deep-seated fear of mortality. How would you like your character to end? Will they fulfill their destiny and join their ancestors in Yomi, the realm of sacred ancestors, in this case, their consciousness uploaded to the cloud, or will their soul be forced to undertake another cycle on the celestial wheel of reincarnation? This has no mechanical implications, but you should keep it in mind. Your GM certainly will. Or in this case, we're most likely going to continue using the term storyteller for our game here. The situation here that we see here is going to be a secret.
Yep.
We have already determined that there are going to be a couple of things between just the player and myself. There's going to be a secret. The secret can be a small one or a big one. I don't mind, but there will be a secret that only the two of us will know at the start of the game. But there is going to be a second secret, which is at the beginning. So on our session 0, I will ask you to answer this question by writing it down, and you will place it in an envelope.
Yeah.
Which I will read, and then I will seal the envelope. And at the end of the game, we will open the envelopes and see what they said. Part of this is because I am actually more and more, I believe that for certain games, players should actually get to call when their characters die. That it is not your HP reached 0, that's it, you're dead. I don't, but some systems specifically have situations in which that's not necessarily the case. We have to decide what kind of game we want this to be, the lethality of the game, as it were. And that's something that we'll be discussing in session 0, especially because a big part of this game can often be things like duels. And if you decide to get into a duel to the death with somebody else, then it kind of removes some of that sting if you're like, okay, we're going to duel to the death, but I can't die, right? So we'll have to choose what level of lethality we're interested in. But that lethality won't necessarily change the idea of the answer to this question. So everyone's going to answer it, but no one's going to reveal the answer except to me. And it will not necessarily mean that later on I'll be like, well, I killed you in this way because you said that's how you wanted to die. That's not necessarily the case, right? If you're like, I die in a duel, it's not like the first duel that you have, I'm going to be like, haha, a perfect situation right here.
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed the kind of death that you want, but it will be a secret. So in this case, I will ask you to not answer, but to think about it. And when we hit session 0, be prepared to have an answer that you will write down.
Makes sense to me.
The other interesting thing is, if your answer to this question should change, you will write down another piece of paper and put it in another envelope.
Oh, fun.
So that we'll still have a record of where you started, but then we'll see where you ended up.
Very cool.
So we are coming close to the end of this stream, but what I can say, if we have a look at what was going on here in terms of your 20 questions, we've had a lot of interesting stuff thrown down. We have a better idea of the kind of rings that your character is interested in. We've got 3 void. We've got water and air have also been increased.
Yeah.
There are a few skills that you've been looking at already. Heavy in theology, meditation, courtesy and composition are in there as well. There are a bunch of skills that you have not picked yet, though.
Yep.
So that's okay. And we see that your character already has some close connection to Bushido and to their clan. You're not a rebel, at least not yet.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of Ikebana being modified to reflect code. It could even simply be that you're rearranging code, but what that code is doing is rearranging the aesthetics of the shrine, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like the projections and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a really cool thing. We're getting a really good pick at also the sort of struggle that you've been highlighting, the idea of wanting to go with the flow, wanting to not make waves. And I think that's going to be really interesting, especially for you, considering the characters that I've seen you play before. And you've got a lot to still flesh out for your character, but I think that that's completely understandable. I was never intending to have done, fully formed character right off the bat. But I'm curious. I want to get to know whoever this person ends up being. Do you have any special thoughts?
This was super helpful. I wasn't sure whether it would just be like, well, I guess I have to put some numbers on the sheet, but I think it was helpful, and I'm really glad that I also filled out the 20 questions sheet as I went, because I was able to make extra notes that were relevant to myself. Oh my god, just writing comments on code. Legit.
That's actually amazing.
Honestly, that might be it.
Commenting someone else's badly commented code.
Yeah, exactly.
So you felt like this form of character creation was helpful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Considering it's
it
my first time too.
Yeah, it helped progress me down the road towards forming this character, and there are specific things that now I need to let go and spend a bit of time reading the advantages and disadvantages and looking at how all of that balances out once I've made those choices, and then being like, oh shit, I have 0 composition and I want to be the best person at composition. Let's fix this. It's kind
of a great crash course. Going through it like this, instead of it just being straight up, here are the mechanics, pick. Yeah. Instead, they tie it specifically to what kind of character do you want to play.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really worthwhile. Hey, I hear that there's a stream tomorrow. What's going on tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Friday?
Yeah.
Friday is Punchy.
Now, we do know that Punch...
It's going to be a different stream. It will be on Liz's channel, but it might be Stardew Valley or something else. She may tweet about it or post on our Discord. Let me just throw that in chat.
Yep.
Ooh, Elizabeth is here.
Timberborn.
So click her name in the chat. Timberborn possibly, or something else. But that'll be Friday at 6, 1800 Eastern time. On Saturday, there will be a Drew Crew at 3 o'clock, continuing the mysterious bagpipes, something about bagpipes. And Drew Crew is always a great time. They're reading Nancy Drew novels with voices and sassy comments.
They're getting also some comments from an actual Scot. Cheeky
It's
C has
true.
been tuning in. Yeah, someone's pounding around upstairs.
Yeah, I was just making sure that it's coming from upstairs and not that like our building was shaking and earthquake. Then there is Saturday evening. Scott usually streams something. Details again on this Discord or Twitter. And then Sunday we will be playing a one shot here on this channel. 5 o'clock. That's 1700 Eastern time. John, do you want to tell us?
We're going to be doing Taskmaster. I have been coming up with tasks. I've been also stealing tasks. Let's be absolutely fair. Some of these are ideas that I have lifted from other places or modified from other places. But there's going to be a whole bunch of tasks. We're going to be putting Liz, Scott, and Kate through them, and they will have to somehow get through these tasks, appeal to me, win points, and end up the victor at the end. So we're looking forward to that. That's this Sunday, and I am pumped for it. But mostly I'm pumped for the idea that dinner is ready right now. So we're going to let you go. Kate, thanks so much for tuning in for this.
Thank you so much for running this. This was super helpful and like for helping me answer the questions and knowing where to look for them and stuff. Very, very. I mean, that's what storytellers do, but thank you.
Next week, we'll hopefully have another character creation session with either Scott or Liz. But for now, go check out our Discord, go enjoy your games, and remember that no matter what, even if you are experiencing difficulty, and even if the solution can be just as hard, often the best way for you to resolve your issues in your role-playing games and possibly even life itself is...
use your word hole up and to the right.
Use your word hole. The up and to the right doesn't happen on this. Not on clinic hours.
Use your word hole.
Use your word hole.
Communicate.
We'll see you next time.